Good afternoon, everyone. I am Romy Drucker, and it is my privilege to serve as the Director of Education at the Walton Family Foundation. And I'm thrilled to be here at RISE, which is really one of my favorite events of the year. And apologies to all the previous presenters, but I am also thrilled to be moderating what I think is the most exciting panel of the day. So we're going to get right into it, but before we do, I wanted to share just sort of how we're thinking about youth engagement at the Walton Family Foundation very quickly. And we're not just dedicated to serving youth, we're thinking much more deeply than ever before about how we're connecting with them, how we're co-designing with them, and how we're doing more to elevate their perspectives. And so here we are today to have a conversation about Gen Z, what we're starting to learn about this generation and understand about this generation as they step into their civic power, their political power, and their ability to be problem solvers in the world. So without further ado, I'm going to have each of the students introduce themselves. I think it's very important for everyone in the audience here and out in the virtual world to just know a little bit about your story, to be able to understand where you're coming from and how your lived experience is really informing your perspectives on education and success. So Megan, let's start with you.
Yes, thank you. My name is Megan Barr, and I am a state board member for the Wisconsin Technical College System. It's very interesting hearing the perspective of high school students and college students because I was a completely different student in high school. I was a D and F student. I skipped class pretty much every day. I did not pass. I had to finish high school a year later from my classmates. And that was ultimately due to me being a student with a documented disability. I have ADHD. And my high school at the time did not support me. They did not give me accommodations. And they in no way really had any faith in me, which led to me having pretty much little faith in myself. Fast forward to college, I started in tears, but I had a support system that was absolutely incredible. Shout out to Gateway Technical College in Racine, Wisconsin. And they got me involved, they supported me, they gave me opportunities to succeed, and told me I had potential until I eventually believed in it myself, which leads me to being a state board member, going for my bachelor's degree, and hopefully going into a career in higher education.
Let's have a round of applause for Kira, we'd love to hear a little bit about you.
Hi everyone, I'm Kira Canada. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa, and I just finished my junior year at Des Moines Lincoln. I'll be a senior next year. I'm a part of JAG, which is Jobs for America's Graduates, and I was just recently elected in May at our first National Career Development Conference as the first ever national president-elect. So this is our first time having it on a national level. We've had it at the state and the local level, but now this year we're finally kicking off our national office, so I'm very grateful to be a part of that. I'm interning this summer at Dickey and Campbell Law Firm in Des Moines, and my hopes are to become a criminal defense attorney. And my dream school is Howard, which is right down the road, so going to be coming back here soon to come visit that. And I'm just very thankful to be here, and thank you for the educators, students, and everyone sitting in this room today, because we all deserve our seat here. So thank you guys just for being here, and everyone that supports student in the future of education.
Hi, my name is Emiliano Juarez, and I am a rising junior at White Plains High School in New York. And a little bit about me, so I'm a member of the Youth Collaboratory. It's a group from the Citizens University. And essentially in this program, I'm doing a power project, essentially an issue where in your own community, and you tackle it face on. And so the issue that I chose is working across political differences among youth and bringing them together to collaboratively work together on issues that are most pressing within the country. And the topic that I chose is gun violence. And so the three-part series that I hosted with the Westchester County Youth Councils, I'm also part of that. Shout out to Marissa Raganisi. She's the program director, and she's been helping me with this project this entire time. So I'm very thankful for her. We gathered youth from across Westchester County, 10 plus youth, and we're working on a project that we're going to implement within our community this fall, hoping for November. And essentially it's going to be a community day event where we're educating people from around our county on how to store guns safely and how to use safe locks and all of these wonderful things. We're gonna invite guest speakers, and it's gonna be an amazing event to educate people about gun violence everywhere in the United States. So thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm David Spicer. I'm a senior studying political science at MIT, where I have the honor of serving as the undergraduate association president. I was born in Cuernavaca, Mexico, but I grew up in Sulphur, Louisiana, in Southwest. It's the heel of the state. I would like to give a shout out to my earliest educator, my biggest support, my mom, whoever, when I came to the stateside, really planted the seed in me of caring about education and becoming an education advocate. And so throughout high school, college, I think that seed has certainly sprouted. And this summer, I am working as a governor's fellow under the Louisiana Commissioner for Higher Education, who you might have saw earlier in the day. But that's a little bit about me, so I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. Kira and Emiliano, I want to start with the two of you. We can't have a conversation about education without sharing some reflections on the pandemic and what our experiences were during that time. So, Kira, maybe we could start with you sharing how you experienced the pandemic and how you're feeling today about the sense of learning you experienced, what you missed, and also how it affected your social connections with peers.
I would say COVID was really weird for me because at first I think like the rest, everyone here, we were like, yes, like we don't have to go to school, we're gonna be at home. So I was really excited about that. And spring break was my birthday too, so I was like, yeah, it's gonna be a fun birthday. And my mom was like, you're not doing anything. And I was like, hold on. So it was like nice at first to not have to go to school. I mean, I feel like that's every kid's dream to not go to school. But after we were virtual the next year, I was really struggling with math classes, which I've always struggled in. And I noticed I wasn't able to ask the same questions that I know I'd be able to ask in the classroom. And not being able to directly point out something, you're on a screen, you're having to email someone, especially with like the online virtual labs and things like that. Those were really hard for me to navigate through. And I'm also a very social person, so it was really hard for me not seeing my friends and mostly my teachers. And I think some people might find that interesting because I would say I connect with my teachers more than my friends or peers. And that was the hardest for me, was not seeing my teachers every day. And just like even the good morning greets, just saying hi to them and staying after to just talk about, this lesson, or even just something that may be going on outside of school. So I would say the social part was the hardest for me because I'm just that social person. And I think it was also very difficult for me because there was a lot of leniency and I was able to work at my own pace, which was really good. But I didn't have to go to class if I really didn't want to, and no one was monitoring me. My parents were at work. But I did stick through it, and I was going to class. And on the good side, I was able to take naps in between class. And I'm a strong advocate for naps because yes, it really does help you recharge, and it worked every single time for me. So I think that was good, and so I feel like that was kind of my experience. And now I think that some things that I might have missed out on were, just the basic high school things such as dances and things like that. And I feel like I was just a freshman, and when I came back, I was a junior. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to go to college, and I was very scared and still am a little bit about just where I'm going to be in a few years and not having the designated time that I feel like I really needed in that year and a half to search for colleges. And now I'm a little bit more at ease with knowing what I want to do and where I want to go. But I think that time really could have been useful on just researching and talking, connecting with not people only in my school and community, but people around at events like this. So I think that was the most hardest thing, was those opportunities weren't there for me.
Thank you, Kira. Emiliano, will you share your reflections on the same question?
Of course. So for me, I remember this day. It was March 13th. It was a Friday, and I was just talking to my friends like, oh, like, you know, what's gonna happen next week? Like, I don't know. They're canceling school for 2 days next week, so, you know, what's gonna happen? And then I didn't see them from there on. I got on the bus, went home, didn't do anything after. I didn't study for any of the tests because, you know, like, there was no point in doing so. I mean, school was gonna be canceled. So it was really a time for me during that period to kind of reflect on myself and kind of improve my own needs. And so I really discovered my passions and my interests during that time. So it's kind of different for me, actually. COVID actually helped me go on long walks with my dog, or kind of like reflect on what I want to do with my life. And so I discovered gardening. And so gardening was really essential for me during the pandemic. It got me through a lot of stuff, and I really enjoyed it. And so that was like mostly the main important thing. I was also more of an introvert at the time, I would say. So it didn't really impact me socially because I'd prefer to stay in my room and, like, you know, do work and all those things. But at some point, you know, I was just like, you know, I need to go out. Like, I need to interact with people and come again with all my friends that I didn't know. It was 8th grade at the time, so I had no idea what high school was gonna be like. I essentially entered high school virtually on Zoom, and I haven't talked to any of my friends for months, and so I had no idea how I was gonna interact with people, how I was gonna engage socially. I didn't know if I was gonna make any friends either as well. And so that was really hard for me, just going into that environment, not knowing anything. And so, however, as the years progressed, I developed more social skills as high school went on. And I'm luckily, you know, I have tons of friends now, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, because high school, you just need to be engaged, and, you know, it was really a tough period for me because I couldn't find any genuine connection with all the masks and not being able to see people's faces, not see people's smiles. It was really hard. And so I would say that was.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for sharing, both about the challenges and some of the silver linings. David and Megan, you had a different experience because you were in college. And I want to hear from you how the pandemic impacted your priorities, and also sort of how it changed your view of education. David, why don't we start with you?
For sure. So I remember it, again, March 13th. I think everyone has that date memorized now, but I got on an emergency alert text. It's like, you need to leave tonight. And so I packed up my entire dorm room. I had to get on a flight back to Lake Charles, where the airport is. But I think, and I didn't go back to school for a year and a half. It wasn't until the beginning of my junior year that I went back to campus. And so that first year David is a very different person than the David up here in front of you. And I think some of the positive things I took away was really, I think, virtual opened up a lot of opportunities that were where geography was a boundary. So I know for me and my classmates, taking advantage of internships that once were dependent on the school you went to. So for me, when I saw DC had virtual internships, I took advantage of that. But on the other side, I think my school has students from all 50 states, from a lot of countries around the world, and thinking about this school now has to be constantly thinking about what's happening in students' backyard. For me, when I started off my sophomore year, Southwest Louisiana had 2 hurricanes back to back. I remember evacuating and on a hotspot trying to tune into a lecture for one of my classes. So certainly that's something Boston doesn't have to worry about. But now that I'm an MIT student in Southwest Louisiana, where hurricanes are a thing, that's something I had to worry about. And so I think we saw a lot of that consciousness around what's happening, not just in where the university is based, not just the building, but what's happening where students call home, where they call community. And so I think there was an awareness of that brought about through the pandemic.
Megan? Megan, how about you?
The first thing I learned is I am not an online learner. But I think a big takeaway from the pandemic, from just talking to technical college students across the state of Wisconsin, of course, it's a little bit of a different perspective than your traditional 4-year. And we've talked about it before today of trusting students when they tell you their needs and their wants, whether that be I'm an online-only student, I don't thrive in the classroom, or I need to be in the classroom, I need to talk to my instructors, or I need that hybrid. We have in the technical college system a lot of single moms, a lot of caregivers. I spoke on a panel of students last week, and most of us worked 3 jobs while in our education. So a big takeaway for me personally was ask for help, but then a big takeaway for all the students I talk to in general is don't be afraid to bring your needs and wants to your institution and to expect those needs and wants back from them.
Oh.
That's a great segue to the next topic I want to talk about, which is mental health. When we were preparing for this panel, we said this is something we want to talk about with this audience. And the Walton Family Foundation, in partnership with Murmuration and John Della Volpe, who's a pollster at the Harvard Institute of Politics, recently did a survey of 4,000 Gen Zers. And one of the findings from the survey was that 70% said they believe there is a youth mental health crisis in this country right now. We see this in the headlines. The reality is it was an issue before the pandemic. And I want to ask each of you to reflect on what you feel is the challenge in this moment that students are grappling with, what's getting in the way of them thriving, and just reflections you have for the influencers in this audience who can do something about this regarding what's needed. How can institutions rise to meet this challenge? Let's start with you, Megan.
Definitely. Mental health is something I have a lot of experience in. I think, as I shared earlier, I struggled with it a lot in high school, and I went to high school that didn't support me at all and didn't allow me accommodations and didn't allow me support. And then I started thriving as soon as I got that support and as soon as I got those accommodations at my technical college. And I think that's a big takeaway, that if you support your students and you give them the tools that they need to succeed, they will thrive. So, as I was saying, what was the question?
Well,
I
you're
didn't hear it
answering
right.
the question
Yes.
beautifully.
Thank you.
So you just shared a very candid reflection
Yes.
on your experience. So do you have thoughts for the influencers in the audience about how institutions can do more to address this crisis in the moment?
Definitely. I think we obviously have a lack of support, not only in our high schools, but in our colleges. It's hard for one staff member to be responsible for hundreds of students. And it's not very personal that way. So you can't really support your student if you don't even remember what their name is. I also think short-term Pell Grant is very important. I, as a student, did not get financial aid because I needed to take a small amount of classes every semester in order to get through them and pass them. I can't take 4, 5, 6 classes because I know I will not pass them. I need that slower class schedule. So allowing students to get financial aid when only taking 2 or 3 classes, I think would be amazing. Specifically talking about mental health once more with our technical college students, having jobs, families, that kind of thing.
Emiliano, you talked about the sense of disconnectedness you felt from your peers. And amongst your social group in your high school, what's the conversation about the sense of anxiety? You also shared a strategy in terms of how you deal with your own anxiety. So what would you like the audience to know about how Gen Zers are experiencing this moment and maybe ideas that you have for better empowering youth and supporting youth to deal with their mental health challenges?
Yeah, of course. So essentially within my own social circle, we often joke around about all of the issues that we're dealing with, really. Through comedic relief, we're just like joking about everything that we're struggling with, and I feel like that's like a good way to kind of cope with everything that's going on. I believe Dr. Tucker talked about this before, where she said that there's like peer confidants or a peer support system, and I feel like that would be really beneficial because peers often know what peers or friends, students know what they're talking about because they've experienced it. And so I feel like a system like that would be very beneficial for us, especially when we can talk our problems to somebody who understands us. Because with some of the adults, they might not know what we're going on. We don't want to share everything that our personal lives with them. And so with training, proper funding, all of these, the issues that we're dealing with can be tackled and they can be improved on. And so I believe, yeah.
Great. Kira, did that resonate with you? What are your reflections?
Yeah, I would say that mental health has become, it's always been an issue, but it's become an issue that we're talking about now. And I think that understanding that we are people before we are students or workers or whatever our title is one of the most important things. And if a student says that they need something, like you were saying, you need to give it to them because that is your job, that is your duty as a teacher or a parent or someone that is in charge, I guess, of a student.
David, we heard some personal reflections and also some reflections on policy recommendations. You're in a couple of positions of influence in terms of policies that could affect students. What comes to mind for you in terms of what would be a powerful way for people in this room to respond in this moment?
I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. Students are smart. We know we notice what's available, but more importantly, we notice what's not available. When students look at policies and practices, they know and they feel when they're being left out of those. So for example, for institutions that offer mental health services, when you look at clinicians, often they're lacking in clinicians of color. They're lacking in clinicians who are LGBTQ+. And those student communities are left out of the supports they have. It means a lot for me personally. Having someone, a Hispanic clinician, means a lot for me, and I know for students that I advocate for within student government, it means a lot. So my advice on the policy front is really think about policies with students on the margin in mind, those students that are left out of policies and practices. I will also add in, I know in the landscape of higher education that students are sometimes or adversely impacted for seeking help for mental health support. So for example, marks on transcripts, sometimes reapplying for admissions. These are practices that really stigmatize mental health, but even worse, they really prevent students from seeking the help that they need and having someone in their corner to get that support. So I think those are some of the recommendations I would offer.
Great. I want to talk about another area that is both a challenge and an opportunity. As everyone knows, the Reagan Institute does a ton of work to facilitate civil discourse and think about how we're modeling how to disagree with one another, how to debate one another, how to engage as thoughtful digital citizens, which, given how plugged in we all are, and especially you all are, is becoming harder and harder. So I wanted to ask you about sort of the impact of social media and these fast news cycles on your ability to connect with others, on your ability to debate others and feel like you can find ways to agree even when you disagree. But let's start with you, Emiliano. Are you having any experiences in your high school that's helping you be a good digital citizen?
Yeah, so in my high school, they actually offered a bit of like digital literacy classes, like not classes, but like assemblies where we learned how to be powerful digital citizens and how to use the internet correctly. And I think they were really important and powerful because we got to learn a lot and like the consequences if we don't use it right. And so those are really powerful in unlocking our digital citizenship. However, social media can also be very distracting. And just looking at all the news and everything that's been saying, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation as well. And so it can be hard to kind of like just read headlines and not get the full story of everything that's going on. And that's what mostly a lot of people do. They just see an Instagram post of just a headline and they post it. And I'm victim to this as well. However, I actually read everything and go through everything, all of the articles. I like AP News as well. But I feel like a lot of us fall victim to that and just reposting things just because we feel like it's important. It's very performative and it's not actually getting to the root problem of a lot of the issues that we're facing. But also education is also very important. So reposting these things is also kind of helpful because a lot of people don't know about the issues that are out there. So,
Megan, do you ever unplug? Is that even a possibility?
I've had to. There was, I consider myself a workaholic, so I spend a lot of my time on my phone, on my email, if not then on social media, or doing homework. So I think in this day and age, it's incredibly hard to unplug. And I think it does really impact young people's mental health when you're glued to your phone. And it's kind of sometimes hard to get away from that. I believe the term doom scrolling is a thing when, there's a bad event happens and you just can't help but you're drawn to it. But I think we need to unplug in order to be able to have conversations with one another face to face.
Kira, what's been the experience in your school in terms of support for digital literacy and also just helping students feel like they know how to have a civil debate?
I would really say, I don't want to put my school down, but they've really struggled with upkeeping with digital citizenship because personally, there are a lot of other issues, such as we can't even get students to not bring guns to school. I don't know how we're going to figure that one out.
Yeah.
So I really worry about those things. And personally, I'm always on my phone. It's a really bad habit, but I always get done what I need to. And they're like, well, we can't really say anything. And I think that's something that I kind of need to work on because that's not really an excuse, But I think that those bigger issues kind of take over and we don't really look at those little things such as being on your phone. And I think that social media does lean more towards harmfulness when it comes to education because nowadays there's students who make pages just to bully kids on Instagram. And I've witnessed this at my own school just to make fun of kids. And you're not going to come to school and not think about that. That's going to come into the classroom, especially if it may be that person or someone that's engaged with that post on Instagram, for example. You're not going to want to go to school. You're not worried about your education, but you're worried about what's happened on a whole different world. So I think that social media has really made it hard to keep the balance between, the good and bad, especially with reality and fake reality. So I think that's definitely been an issue in my own school, and I try to not really engage in that because it does, when you do get involved with it, it does harm your education and your learning.
David, you offered us some very actionable policy and programmatic solutions regarding mental health. So what do you have on this issue?
Sure. So last year, MIT had an incident bringing up the topics around freedom of expression. There was a lecture that was canceled, and it was an incident picked up in a lot of the Times, Boston Globe. And so we had a lot of conversation around these topics of freedom of expression, what is a digital citizenship, having healthy debate. So I think to sort of start my response, I definitely want to put where I'm drawing the line. I think there's a point for student safety. There were students who I think, Kira, you made mention to, of bullying threats. And I think those are instances where people feel really empowered by this sort of anonymous way of issuing out their opinions. but that's so dangerous for students. So I think that's something that universities and institutions and schools need to be very proactive about helping and supporting their students. Now, on the healthy debate side, it's really tough. I'll be honest, I don't think I have a perfect solution, but I will elevate initiatives to help students have those real conversations. At my school, we have something called Real Talk at MIT, where they sort of give you the structure. How do you have these very uncomfortable conversations? And I give important notice to that program because it helps you. How do you have this conversation when you have people with different positions of power? Certainly, I found myself in conversations where perhaps if me and other students, perhaps I'm that person with the most power in that room. Certainly found myself in the other end of that. So I think, what can schools do to sort of teach students to be good citizens, not just when we're face to face, but also recognizing that we live in a virtual world, like it or not, and how does that citizenship carry over into the digital space?
We only have a few more minutes left, so I want to ask everybody to answer a question about your aspiration for yourself and how you're defining success for yourself. Because in spite of all of these challenges, what I know about each of you and what the research shows thus far about your generation is that there's a lot of optimism. And there's a lot of willingness to take on hard problems despite some of the lack of trust, despite some of the shortcomings of institutions. So Megan, let's start with you. Let's go down the line. I'd love for you to share what's your aspiration for yourself? How are you defining success? How is your education getting you there, and what do you need more of?
Yes, well, as I mentioned, I want to go into a career of higher education. And being here and also being on the state board for the Wisconsin Technical College System has helped that immensely. I also got to serve on my school's board of trustees and also got to serve as a Newman Civic Fellow. So I've gotten so many amazing opportunities as a student. And I think it's incredibly important to give other students these opportunities and let them know that they're out there. And I'm talking all students, not just certain students, all students, even ones with like difficult schedules. But ultimately, my view of success is working in higher education and impacting students the same way that my school and my technical college system has impacted me. I'm going for my bachelor's right now, then I'm going to get a master's, and then I'm going to get a doctorate. I'm claiming it right now, and work with students and hopefully be an administrator at a college someday, or work in policy, or be an instructor. I'm not completely sure yet, but I think it's important for people to realize how immensely important students are, and bringing these opportunities for them so that they can succeed.
Thank you for sharing, and
No
I
problem.
think a lot of people in this room aren't sure yet about where they're headed, and also we're all behind you. Thank you so much. Kira, how about you?
Yeah, I would say so. My aspirations, as I've stated, I want to become a criminal defense lawyer. And I don't say that would be my end-all, be-all, because I know things change throughout your lifespan. But as long as I'm helping people, then I will be okay. I think that at the end of the day, if I'm helping people in some kind of way, and not just in my school, in my community, but I want to reach as many people as I can. And I think that's what JAG has really helped me to do and has did a great job of doing, is connecting students to those jobs or whatever it is that they want to do after high school if they finish. And I would define success, not just for myself, but just for anyone, is being in a comfortable space that aligns with your dreams and aspirations. Not saying it may be that specific dream or goal that you had, but it aligns with what made you have that dream or aspiration. There was things along the way that have made me want to be a lawyer, and that boils down to wanting to help people on a larger scale than just going to talk to people, but really making an impact in not only my community, but in the world.
Thank you, Kira. Emiliano?
Yeah, so first I would like to clarify a point that Megan made, which is that the opportunities for people, for students especially, me being first generation Mexican American, it's hard for me to even just like ask for help or to even just look for opportunities. I can't really ask my parents because they came here from Mexico, and so I have zero help from them. However, there's so many adults in my life where I'm asking for help, and I'm so grateful for them. But it can be really hard for, especially the population where I'm from, to even just ask for those opportunities. Like, oh, do you have any connections to this person, or do you know of anybody? And so I really mean it for everybody watching. The students who are first generation, you know, they really need a lot of help for finding those opportunities because they're out there. It's just nobody's telling them, or people want to keep it to themselves. And I've had experience with that as well. And so the personal aspirations, I guess, would be I want to be a gastroenterologist. So I would need to go to college, go to med school, and then do my specialty. So it's a long road, but I'm gonna get there. And I know set in stone that I'm gonna be a doctor. It's always been my goal since I was really early, when I was young. When I was
Yeah, you're gonna get there.
yeah, when I was younger. But yeah, and I would define success as personal achievements, essentially. Just waking up in the morning, brushing your teeth, making your bed. That's, in my eyes, that's success for somebody who might not be motivated to do that. That's success in my eyes, and just waking up in the morning saying that, oh, I'm gonna live another day, you know, because you only have a certain number of time, right? So you really have to enjoy every single day, and so success, that would be success in my eyes. But for personally me, you know, it would be the same thing, but also keeping good grades and, you know, hanging out with friends, socializing, having a life, essentially, hanging out, essentially, yeah.
Thank you for your wisdom, Emiliano. David?
Yes, well, remember us when you're a doctor so we get the friends discount.
Of course.
100%. Really.
I have always been motivated by a quote, be the leader you needed when you were younger. As a student, I was a student with an IEP. I was an elementary school student in speech therapy. And I think that little David Spicer wouldn't see himself up in this chair right now. So for me, I think my vision is, how do I be the leader that David Spicer really needed, that children like me when I was younger needed? So for me and my future, I really want to pivot around my definition of success, which I think is the impact that you have in your community. I think community, for me, is how I best describe Louisiana. It's a state I love dearly. And so for me, my intentions are to go back, hopefully teach high school math in Baton Rouge, and then go back to get a JD, PhD, and hopefully end up doing education law to really serve the students of Louisiana. But again, I think I stay really motivated by seeing leaders of today and then getting that opportunity to see who we all together are students, what are the leaders that will be for our generation. So that really excites me.
Well, thank you so much, David, Emiliano, Kira, and Megan. I know all of us look forward to partnering with you to make actionable all of the ideas that were raised in this conversation. So thank you so much. Let's have a round of applause.